Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into the sources behind an actor whose presence is, well, it's felt globally, but his actual technique, it's incredibly subtle. Wagner Mourы. Now, when most people hear that name, yeah, they instantly think Pablo Escobar, right? From Narcos.
Of course.
Huge role. Huge. A global phenomenon. But what we want to do today, our kind of mission, is to figure out what's underneath that success. To really get the art of what the source is called subtle influence.
Right.
How did Mourы take this, I mean, truly monstrous figure and make him so compelling, so disturbingly human almost, and without all the usual big, loud villain moments?
Yeah, that's the fascinating part.
His whole reputation, it seems, is built on this power of quiet communication. So we're going to unpack why, for more, the whisper often feels much louder than the shout.
It really does. And if you look across his work, the sources consistently highlight this mastery of nuance in acting. It's fundamental.
Nuance, okay.
He doesn't seem to need that explosive drama to convey depth. He relies on these, tiny shifts, almost imperceptible changes. A pause that goes on just a bit too long, maybe a micro-expression, and it forces you, the viewer, to actually lean in. You have to watch his face, search for clues, because the real story, the character's internal state, their calculations, it's happening just below the surface. It's where words often can't reach.
Okay, so let's talk about that choice, because, the industry often rewards the big, the loud, the dramatic. Why does Mourы lean so heavily into this philosophy of restraint? Is it just a personal style or something more?
Oh, it's definitely deeper. The sources are pretty clear that his method is a very deliberate mix. It's artistic expression fused with a really strong socio-political awareness.
Ah, okay. So it's connected to the themes.
Exactly. He seems to understand that when you're playing a character caught in, say, a violent system or deep corruption, you don't need to spell out the trauma. You you let the weight of their situation, that suffocating pressure, inform every single tiny gesture.
So the circumstance speaks through him.
Precisely. That's how the subtle influence works for him. He's not delivering a lecture, right?
Right.
He's embodying the condition that creates the message in the first place.
And he trusts the audience to get it.
Totally trusts the audience's intelligence. He knows if he shows that slight tightening around the eyes or maybe a tiny shift in posture, that you'll connect that small detail to the huge external forces crushing the character. And this lets him explore really complex moral gray areas without boiling it down to simple good versus evil.
That's a great point. It's like he's not just playing the person, he's playing the system that shaped them. Okay, let's ground this. Where do the sources really point for clear examples? Where can we see this controlled intensity in action?
Well, we kind of have to start with the obvious one, but maybe look at it through this specific lens. Pablo Escobar in Narcos.
Right.
Mourы didn't just, learn the line. He spent months, apparently, working on the specific walk, the posture, showing Escobar's growing arrogance, that feeling of being untouchable.
Yeah, I remember reading about the physical transformation. He made this notorious figure, three-dimensional. And the genius, like you said, was making you understand Escobar's motivations, the family man thing, the Robin Hood image he cultivated in Natan, without ever letting him off the hook for the monstrous things he did. That subtlety keeps you conflicted, doesn't it? You can't just dismiss him as a caricature.
It creates dissonance.
Yeah.
Which is exactly the point, I think. And you can contrast that huge global role with Captain Nascimento in the Brazilian elite squad films.
Ah, yes. Very different energy.
Very different. And maybe even tighter control.
Yeah.
Here, Mourы used Nascimento not just to tell a story, but as a vehicle to really interrogate police violence in Brazil, the systemic corruption from the inside out.
Okay.
And the character's rage, his burnout, his moral exhaustion. It wasn't really in big speeches. It was communicated through, the heaviness of his silence.
Yeah.
Complete lack of wasted energy in his movements. You could almost see the moral compromises weighing him down physically.
So those are political statements delivered purely through, physics, expression, not dialogue.
Pretty much, yeah. It's all embodied.
And it feels like these roles are deeply connected to his identity as, a political storyteller, right?
Yeah.
Even looking at his directing, like Mariella. Is that consistent?
Absolutely. The sources draw a direct line. In Mariella, which he directed, he uses that same nuance to show Carlos Mariella the revolutionary figure. He's presented as complex, flawed, completely shaped by his political beliefs and the circumstances he was fighting against. The internal struggle always mirrors the external systemic oppression. His work just doesn't let you separate the personal pain from the political context. It's intertwined.
Okay, so if the result is this really profound emotional depth, let's get into the nuts and bolts, the mechanics. When the camera's right up close on his face, what are the sources saying he's actually doing that we might miss? I mean, it looks like intense staring sometimes, but what's actually in that nonverbal toolkit?
Right, this is where it gets really, really interesting. Because his mastery of nonverbal communication is what elevates a scene.
Yeah.
It's about highly specific physical techniques.
Okay, like what?
Well, let's start with silence. He absolutely weaponizes it. Those strategic pauses, calculated moments of quiet, they create almost unbearable tension.
Yeah, you feel it.
In a Moura scene, what isn't said often carries like 10 times the weight of the dialogue. It forces the audience to scan his face, his eyes, looking for the internal decision, the calculation that's about to, erupt into action.
That pause, that moment before the storm breaks, it's pure anxiety for the viewer.
Exactly. And then, adding to that, there's what some sources call his secret weapon, micro-expressions.
Expressions. Okay, what are those exactly?
These are super fleeting facial movements, like fractions of a second. Blink and you miss them, genuinely.
Wow.
And this is what rewards the really attentive viewer. It gives you deeper access into the character's psychology.
So we're talking tiny things, like a millimeter twitch in an eyebrow. Or maybe the corner of his mouth flickers for just an instant, showing suppressed anger or sudden vulnerability.
Exactly that. The source material really emphasizes how these give you hidden insights. Maybe a brief softening of the jaw that hints at vulnerability underneath the tough exterior, or like a quick flare of the nostrils that shows he's barely holding back something explosive. These tiny details make his characters feel like real contradictory humans, not just characters reading lines. And thirdly, his eyes. They aren't just looking, they're acting. They're instruments of communication. You could read incredibly complex intentions there.
How so?
Well, there's the unwavering stare, right? That signals pure threat. But then there's the subtle moistening, maybe suggesting compassion. You saw that sometimes with Escobar's family. Or even like a slow, deliberate dilation of the pupils that indicates cold, hard calculation.
It really is the whole package then, isn't it? Because it's not just the face. I've noticed when he shifts his physical weight, the entire dynamic of a scene can change.
That's the perfect transition to total body expression. His body language and acting is telling a whole parallel story alongside the dialogue and facial expressions.
Give me an example.
Think about the sheer weight he seems to carry in his shoulders as Captain Nascimento in Elite Squad. That physical exhaustion.
Right.
Versus the way he shifts posture as Escobar. Relaxed, almost playful when he's the family man with his wife. And then instantly guarded, heavier when he's the drug lord conducting business.
Yeah.
You literally see two different people in the same body just based on how he holds himself.
That total physical commitment must be what creates that quiet charisma in acting the sources talk about, that magnetic pull, even when the character is frankly terrifying. If he's using restraint, how does he generate that pull without big, flashy gestures?
Well, the charisma seems to come directly from that restraint.
Yeah.
It relies on strategic stillness that contrasts sharply with very minimal calculated movements.
Okay.
It implies there are these huge reserves of emotion being held tightly in check, this tremendous controlled energy.
Yeah.
And it makes you, the viewer, constantly wonder what would happen if he actually let go.
It keeps you on edge.
Completely. And it also generates empathy through recognition. When you see that flicker of fear, or maybe exhaustion behind the eyes, you recognize the flawed, real person under the archetype, even if it's a villain. It creates this unsettling intimacy. You feel like you're seeing something authentic, not just a performance designed to manipulate you. And that connection is magnetic.
And it seems like this subtle approach is exactly why he's so effective at embedding these big political themes in his films without it feeling preachy or sacrificing the character's reality.
Yeah.
The politics aren't shouted, they're sort of worn, like a heavy coat.
Precisely. That quiet intensity allows the audience to confront really tough social issues, particularly in Brazil, but with global resonance head-on. The key narratives are consistently woven into the character's personal struggle.
Such as?
Well, things like social inequality, breeding violence, the cyclical, devastating nature of authoritarian, often brutal, responses to crime, and, crucially, the deep corruption that seems inherent in power structures, no matter who's wielding that power.
Right.
The big takeaway here, I think, is that he forces the audience to experience these abstract political ideas, concepts like state violence or economic disparity, in a really visceral way. You feel it through the intimate, often painful struggle of one person trapped within that system.
And speaking of weaving in that political context, let's touch briefly on his work behind the camera. His directorial debut, Mariella, seems like it would be a perfect translation of this whole philosophy, right? From actor to director.
It absolutely is, according to the analysis.
Mm-hmm.
The sources looking at the Mariella film suggest his directorial approach mirrors his acting. It refuses to romanticize the hero figure, the resistance fighter.
Keeps the complexity.
Exactly. Keeps that quiet determination and moral ambiguity front and center. His visual language reinforces it directly. He uses lots of close-ups, apparently, to capture the fear, but also the determination in the eyes of the characters. He uses long takes to build tension, especially in scenes of evasion or pursuit. And critically, the sources note minimal use of musical score during key moments, action scenes, critical decisions.
Letting the silence work again.
Letting silence and ambient sound amplify the weight of every choice, every action. He directs pretty much exactly the way he acts. Quiet intensity.
And his influence isn't just contained within Brazil, is it? He's genuinely a multilingual storyteller.
Yeah.
Portuguese, Spanish, English, doing significant cross-cultural work too, like the Say Her Name film project.
Yeah, that multilingual fluency is really key to his global reach. Yeah. Because it's not just about speaking the language. The sources suggest he adapts his physical expressions, his vocal patterns, to align with the cultural context of the role or scene. And this ability lets his brand of socially conscious cinema tackle these universal themes, identity, displacement, systemic injustice across really diverse audiences, while still maintaining the authenticity and nuance of the specific cultural perspective he's portraying. It's socially conscious cinema that really travels.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it feels like Moura's artistic legacy isn't really built on spectacle at all. It's built on something much quieter, deliberate, careful restraint.
I think that's exactly right. It's compelling proof that truly authentic performance often emerges not from what an actor shows you, but from what they consciously hold back. His career is almost a template for artists who are looking for substance over just spectacle. It proves that empathy through performance generated through those micro-expressions, those calculated silences, can actually be a revolutionary act.
Yeah.
It connects your own intimate emotional world to these massive political narratives.
It definitely encourages all of us, I think, to look beyond just the surface level when we watch any performance, really. The most powerful statements in art, it seems, don't always need to roar. They can whisper, they calculate, they persist.
Well said.
So, we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. If a barely perceptible movement in a film, a tiny shift in posture, can convey decades of oppression or deep internal struggle, what does your own nonverbal communication, the things you don't say, reveal about your inner world? Maybe pay a little more attention to the silence in your own life this week.